From melt-in-your-mouth Matsusaka Wagyu and fragrant Indian nutmeg to traditional Italian anchovy sauce and bespoke English suits, we travelled the globe to uncover the stories behind some of the world's most expensive items. Our first stop is Artijas, Uruguay, where some of the world's largest and most valuable amethyst crystals are mined. Weighing in at 26 tons, or about 4 African elephants worth of crystal and stone, this massive geode costs almost $1 million. Amethyst isn't particularly rare. In fact, it's a type of quartz, one of the most common minerals on Earth. But the geodes that miners laboriously excavate from Las Torres mine in Artijas, Uruguay, can still cost a pretty penny. So, how much does size matter? And what else makes amethyst so expensive? Hundreds of years ago, amethyst was considered as valuable as rubies and sapphires. But in the 1800s, massive deposits were discovered in South America, tanking its value. Now Uruguay is one of the most prolific producers of amethyst in the world, and this mine is renowned for its massive geodes.
Y son los dos sistemas que tenemos, a cielo abierto y en galerías. Los mega geodos de amatista, que es un diferencial del Uruguay con relación al mundo, que son estas grandes amatistas, se extraen básicamente en el sistema de túneles.
Las Torres mine sits on a wide and ancient basaltic lava flow, ideal conditions for amethyst geodes. But excavating amethyst is no easy feat. The volcanic rock that surrounds it, known as basalt, is porous, allowing water to seep in. Miners know how to use this feature to their advantage.
Hay que tener en cuenta que estas burbujas que tienen 140, 150 millones de años se van llenando del agua de las lluvias que escurre por las grietas del basalto. Entonces todos los geodos de amatista tienen mucha agua.
Miners set off controlled explosions to clear away rock and blast small fissures in undiscovered geodes.
Una vez que se hace la detonación, la expansión de la bomba raja estos geodos, entonces empiezan a aparecer las manchas de humedad. Acá se hace la perforación buscando humedad porque la humedad lleva al geodo. Y bueno, es así que se encuentran y que luego se extraen.
Miners like Renato Arocena start assessing the amethyst's value before it's even out of the ground.
Cuanto más oscura mejor y por lo que tenga dentro. O sea, bulto, calcita, cosa interesante, sí. Algo distinto que distinga la piedra, que resalte.
As lava cools into rock, bubbles of volcanic gas form pockets. In the right conditions, those pockets can turn into this.
Algunos millones de años su formación, su cristalización y después, de acuerdo a las características del suelo y los minerales del suelo, la coloración de la piedra.
Amethyst is quartz that has changed colour because of exposure to radioactive material. Over millions of years, the quartz gradually absorbs the radiation that's naturally present in the rock that surrounds it. This radiation agitates iron atoms in the quartz, which burn off the excess energy in the form of visible light. That radioactivity is what makes amethyst purple. Higher concentrations of iron result in deeper hues.
Lo que hace al valor de la amatista es en definitiva su color, esa intensidad y que ese color sea homogéneo desde la punta del pico hasta la base.
Este sí ya sería un color más o menos bueno, mira. Sería una amatista buena ya.
At Las Torres, miners extract small geodes and chunks of amethyst from an open-air mine.
repente un mes bueno sacas 100 y pocas terrinas, o más o menos. Todo depende de la mancha que tengas. De repente estás sacando bastante piedra, al rato, viste, no, está dando mucho.
But it's in the tunnels where the largest and most prized specimens lie.
En galerías es mucho más difícil que en el cielo abierto, mucho más complicado.
And the stakes get higher when dealing with the giant geodes.
Y acá siempre está de por medio el extraer el geodo entero. En la medida en que lo fracturamos, lo quebramos y después lo tenemos que vender en partes, los valores se vienen abajo. Entonces hay que mantener las piezas enteras, cueste el tiempo que cueste.
Y la parte de cortar así me gusta, ¿no? Ese tema así, extraer geoda. El martillo, perforador y después herramienta. Todo eso que ves, maceta, marrón, todo eso ahí, todo ese tema así, talladera.
Iron rods work as guides that show the miners where and how to cut the rock around the geode.
Tienes que hacer espacio para ir entrando, para poder sacarla para afuera. Se carga el camión y va todo para la fábrica. Allá se hace todo el proceso de preparación.
Acá es el corazón porque acá es donde ingresa el material que llega de mina.
The raw material is washed and sorted by size and quality.
Acá tenemos algo, esto es una matista de muy baja calidad, pero también, o sea, al no tener un color violeta intenso, ya vino preclasificado de cantera, al no tener un color violeta intenso, pero siempre hay artículos, siempre hay productos que se puedan hacer, inclusive con esto.
Artisans like Ricardo Martínez take the raw materials and transform them.
Esta pieza, por ejemplo, viene en bruto, en realidad es una burbuja grande. En bruto viene en campaña desde que la encuentran. Y nosotros lo que hacemos es sacarle solo la parte principal de la piedra, que se transformaría en una pieza especial, un espécimen, que se vende para coleccionistas.
He uses various sized diamond discs to grind each stone into his desired size and shape.
Vamos dando forma, ¿viste? Le vamos dando redondeada una forma, le hacemos una base.
Small flaws can be fixed at this stage.
Sería algo así, ¿viste? Está roto y lo que se le hace es pegarle un pedacito de piedra atrás para restaurarlo. Y terminan, ni se nota, ¿no?
But major breaks will significantly reduce the value of larger pieces.
De pararse con este tipo de cosas, porque antes las sacábamos en la tierra en pequeños trozos. Cuando las veo entero digo, esto no se puede romper.
Carlos Sanchis owns Listaje Minerals, one of Artigas' largest amethyst exporters and home of its largest amethysts, like this 26-ton colossus.
Veníamos haciendo el galpón cuando la encontramos y tuvimos que subir 1 metro más el techo, porque no entraban con los 6 metros, no lo íbamos a poder manipular dentro de esto acá. Ser usado para hacer una joya, una gema, pero la joya es la pieza completa, en este caso.
It took 8 months to process it and move it from the mine to where it stands now. Finding a buyer for a behemoth like this is no easy feat. Sometimes they can stand around for years.
Hace 2 años que la tenemos y hace unos 2 meses y medio que terminamos el trabajo de pulido de la pieza. Se pulió todo el contorno, la tuvimos que cortar al medio y acá tenemos las 2 mitades. Y bueno, recibimos ofertas, pero decidimos no venderla por el precio de la oferta.
So, producers will often work with international retailers that basically act as brokers between them and potential customers. Most of Listaje Minerals' sales consist of smaller pieces. But small doesn't necessarily mean cheap.
Se ve el cristal de amatista por debajo, con el corte transversal, y luego una segunda cristalización que cubre con microcristales, que cubre a cada una de las puntas de amatista que está por debajo. Toda esa cantidad de microcristales, y es un producto que hoy el mercado, este tipo de artículos, el mercado los demanda.
Different combinations of minerals and naturally occurring shapes can also boost the price.
Una pieza como así, como esta, la evaluamos en $4.000. Esta fue vendida en $1.800. Esta pieza está evaluada en $2.800. También es una pieza de calcio. Acá hay una pieza de calcio cristalizada con cristales de amatista. Y luego esta pieza que es una cristalización son generaciones sobre generaciones de cuarzo. Entonces una existe, la naturaleza nos dio la obra por terminada y le hace otro formato y una se superpone a la otra. Esto es similar. Cuando está con el cubito rojo es porque está vendida. Esta pieza se va a Singapur.
Esto es un artículo de lujo y la demanda es fluctuante de acuerdo a cómo está la economía mundial. Pero sí que nosotros estamos vendiendo a más de 50 países alrededor del mundo, donde podemos destacar la venta a Estados Unidos, a Alemania, a China, a Brasil. Hay mucha demanda.
While the demand for diamonds plummeted during the pandemic, the opposite was true for near gemstones. Crystals like amethyst have long been associated with metaphysical healing. And while there's no scientific evidence to back those claims, the industry still grew to be worth more than $1 billion in 2020. That demand is good news for L'Estache and Las Torres, where there is plenty of supply left to be discovered.
Tenemos una minería que tiene más de 100 años y sin embargo hay estudios que indican de que no se ha llegado al 20% de lo extraído. O sea que todavía hay mucho suelo que no se exploró.
The fat in this Matsusaka Wagyu is so soft, it melts as soon as you touch it.
Dès que j'ai mis dans ma bouche, ça fond directement.
The finest cuts of Matsusaka Wagyu have a melting point of 12 degrees Celsius. That's 8 degrees less than Kobe. And while prices for fine diners in Tokyo have never been low, for the first time, this beef is being sold outside of Japan, in Paris, where just 100 grams sells for $530. These cows are so valuable that in 2002, one fetched 50 million yen, over $330,000 at auction. To reach that low melting point, farmers in Matsusaka painstakingly raise these cows and keep them alive longer than their average lifespan with modern and ancient practices. So how do you raise the most expensive beef in the world? And why is Matsusaka Wagyu so expensive?
これが伊藤牧場の、サーロインです。月齢は、40ヶ月のサーロインですので。
Hiroki Ito is a third-generation Matsusaka Wagyu farmer. On his farm in Tsu, Mie Prefecture, you will find only virgin female cows. It's the primary requirement for any of the 80 Matsusaka Wagyu farms here in the Mie Prefecture.
オスよりもメスの方が、味も美味しいですし、柔らかさもメスの方が柔らかいです。匂いでいうと香りがいいですし、味でいうと甘い味ですし、柔らかさでいうと口の中に入れたらとろけると。
Matsusaka beef has long been praised for its extremely low melting point, which is half that of other types of Wagyu. This means that when cooking, the fat melts in a shorter time.
融点が低いのでちょっと溶けてきていますけど、この融点もこの指で触ると分かるようにこうスッとへっこんでいきますね。融点が低いと滑るんですよ。この光っとるように手もね滑ります。
To reach this intense marbling, Old generations of farmers like Hideo, Hiroki's dad, used to feed cows with beer.
昔は食体を起こした牛、食が落ちてきた牛に1代目の正和が与えてまして、でそれを僕は若い折に一緒に手伝って当時関わって飲ましたことはあります。普通の一般の元は昔はキリンビールとかそういうので普通一般的な銘柄はありません。僕が宿農しましたのが25歳の時でございますから、今73歳でございます。誰がビールを飲ましとるっていうのは、まず私は今はもうなくなったと思ってるんですけど。
Although there's no evidence that this practice increases a cow's appetite, many associate Matsusaka Wagyu with it. The fact that Matsusaka has kept a relatively low profile internationally has almost transformed this practice into a legend.
やっぱりそんなに好きじゃなさそうだったんですけど、どうなんですか？
口から飲むっていうのを強制的にやっとるもんで、多分飲んでからあとはほろほろ酔いながら食欲増してると思います。
Hiroki doesn't practice this anymore. Instead, he has perfected the feed and is practicing circular agriculture.
そしてそこから取れたお米から取れる稲わらです。胃の中を整える役割で最初にこのわらは食べさせます。この後、濃厚飼料を与えます。ふすま麦、大豆かすトウモロコシと配合されていまして、そして濃厚飼料は肉をつけるためですね。牛を大きくするのに与えるのが濃厚飼料です。
The cost of feed is an important factor that drives the prices up. To reach that soft marbling, Matsusaka cows need to eat a lot. They also need to eat for a much longer time than other cows.
1.5 倍ぐらいはかかっています。
Matsusaka cows are raised for 30 to 32 months, 6 months longer than other Japanese black cattle. Everything adds up over time for Hiroki. The costs of feeding, temperature control, air circulation, and cleaning the enclosures regularly to avoid flies.
100万で子牛を仕入れたら、そこから肥育で100万円経費がかかりますので、200万円かかっているということになります。
Farmers here call this raising period fattening. For the first 3 to 4 months, cattle eat grass to develop a strong digestive system. This is called the belly creation period. Then comes the finishing period, where cattle gradually switch to concentrated feed and rice straw to fatten up. Hiroki is now experimenting with even longer periods of fattening, raising his cattle from 35 up to 40 months. But raising cows for such a long time can also be dangerous for Hiroki, as a cow could get sick and die.
その長期肥育をしている間に当然牛の寿命というのがありますから、肥育期間が長いと当然人間でも一緒ですが、病気になったり、食欲不振になったり、あと体感の温度が感じにくくなったりと。でやっぱり長期肥育というのはいろんな面で体に負担がかかってしまいます。
A cow at the end of its fattening period is a true treasure. Every year, Matsusaka cows get auctioned off and one gets crowned Queen of Matsusaka. While the highest ever price for one of these cows was 50 million yen in 2002, this auction has never really seen a low price, averaging around 20 million yen. Events like the auction have also fostered another legend, that farmers in Matsusaka massage their cows with alcohol. This time, it is not to improve their appetite, but their appearance.
うちはその生体の予選会で通った牛だけやります。生体の外から見る優勝を競う牛については必ずそういう掃除をしてきれいに出さなあかんっていうことやもんで、けどもうちの牧場は清めとしてやる。はい、こするとこういう形になってド派手に見せたいもの。ビールよかはやられてる方の方が多いと思います。
It's not just adult cows that cost a lot. Calves can be very expensive.
この子牛は約100万ぐらいです。
Hiroki doesn't raise his cattle from birth. At 10 months old, calves are also sold at auctions throughout Japan. Hiroki spends almost half of his time at work buying calves, and he's very demanding.
まずは、顔を見ます。そして額が広い眉間といいますかね、額が広い牛は口が大きいので餌も食い込みもいいということで、あと角も綺麗な角整っとる牛をまず見まして、その次に後ろから、お尻の方を見て、尻尾の上がり下がりとか、体格とか、全体的にしっかりした肥育できる牛を選びます。もうこの子牛は抜群に最高級の BMS12 がもう私の中ではもう確定しています。
BMS12 is the highest marbling grade for Wagyu in Japan. The more intense the marbling, the higher the price. For customers in Tokyo, 100 grams of sirloin costs 10,000 yen, but that's still much less than what Parisians are paying at Huitlacoche, where the same cut is sold at 360 euros. The most premium cut, tenderloin, sells for 5,000 euros per kilogramme.
Comme on a bien respecté la température, le melting point c'est très bon. Dès que j'ai mis dans ma bouche, ça fond directement. Donc comme on a la chaleur naturelle de la bouche, donc ça aide à atteindre la température qu'on a besoin. Donc ça prend secondes. C'est pas ma première fois de goûter ça, mais chaque fois que je goûte, j'ai rien à dire.
The Paris restaurant was the first to successfully export Matsusaka Wagyu out of Japan and include it on its menu. Its most expensive tasting menu costs 520 euros. Matsusaka Wagyu is heavily regulated. To include Matsusaka beef on the menu, the restaurant had to follow strict rules. The Paris restaurant needed to apply for a license, which took a year to be accredited. To maintain it, the restaurant needs to have a high rating on Google Maps, and there can't be another restaurant serving Matsusaka Wagyu within an 840-meter radius. As of 2023, Hiroki has shipped only 3 cows to Huitlacoche. Due to this limited supply, the 520 euro menu with Ito Ranch's premium tenderloin is served to only 1 table per day. This exclusivity is set to get a little bit looser. In the last 10 years, Japan has been a major importer of US beef, importing an average of $1.83 billion a year. Meanwhile, millions worth of Wagyu made the opposite journey as it reached international fame. A decline in tourism after the COVID-19 outbreak and a change in consumer behaviour toward cheaper meats exacerbated this. And now, Japanese cattle farmers are looking outside the country's borders. The export quota for Matsusaka has jumped from 24 in 2022 to 700 in 2024. Of those, it's the most premium cuts that are exported, going to high-end restaurants like Huitlacoche in Paris. This is pushing farmers who want to ship abroad to bet on those lucrative but dangerous long fattening periods.
45ヶ月と、私も初めに世界初この45ヶ月で出すっていうのは生まれた。
This alien-like red membrane is the spice, mace. When removed, it reveals another spice, nutmeg. These twins come from a single fruit, but mace is 5 times as expensive and a lot more fragile. If it breaks while being separated from the nutmeg, it'll sell for much less than a whole one. And if the fruit is picked even 1 day late, both spices can easily be ruined by fungus. Pickers also have to deal with aggressive pests. Here in the town of Huitlacoche, India, farmers harvest a special hybrid variety of the dual spice. That means Huitlacoche farmers can sell their mace for $50 per kilogram, compared to the country's lead producing city, Kerala, which sells mace for $35. Both are still far more expensive than US mace, selling at $9 per kilo. And while farmers often don't reap the major profits from what they harvest, in Huitlacoche, they've successfully cut out all middlemen to gain back control of their spices. So what makes their nutmeg and mace so different from the rest? And why are they so expensive? It's early morning, and Huitlacoche is getting ready to harvest the spices. It's monsoon season, and afternoons are usually pouring with rain. So, Huitlacoche needs to harvest quickly. While nutmeg needs good rain to grow, dry mornings like today are perfect for picking. Huitlacoche is one of 4 female pickers who live on the farm and will pick today. During peak season, there can be 10 pickers at one time, but today, it's nearing the end of the season and the yield will be lower. They expect to pick 800 to 1,000 fruits. They use aluminium and bamboo poles to pick. Some trees grow up to 50 feet high, so those can only be reached with the taller bamboo poles. Using these heavy poles while constantly looking up can leave the pickers with neck and shoulder pain. The nutmeg and mace grow together inside a yellow fruit on the Matsusaka fragrance tree. Once it splits, it's ready to be harvested.
இது வந்து ஓபன் ஆனதுக்கு அப்புறம் இப்படி இருக்கு. இது வந்து இந்த ஃப்ரெஷ்ஷா இருக்கும்போது பறிச்சிரணும்னா
if they leave it for any longer, even one additional day, it will quickly gather mold and be considered second class and about half the price. So, during harvest season, pickers need to check the fruits on the trees every day, especially during the rainy season. Another stressor for Huitlacoche and the other pickers are red ants, also known as fire ants, which nest in these trees.
சின்ன சின்ன எறும்புங்காட்டி அது 1000 2000 3000 இருக்கும் அது மேலே விழுகும் அதுதான் எங்களுக்கு கொஞ்சம் பயமா இருக்கு புடுங்கறதுக்கு.
In small trees, the nests can be easier to detect and manage. But when they're higher up, the entire nest can fall on them.
கஷ்டம் இது பொரிக்கிறது மேலேருந்து பொரிக்கும்போது மேலே தலை எல்லாம் விழுந்துரும் சம்டைம்ஸ் வந்து கண்ணிலேயே விழுக ஆரம்பிச்சிரும் எங்கள் அம்மாவுக்கு அந்த மாதிரி வந்து ட்ரீட்மெண்ட் பார்த்து இப்போ தான் க்யூர் ஆகிருக்குது அப்புறம் வந்து இந்த காய் ஜாதிக்காய் பூவில் வந்து குட்டி குட்டி எறும்பு கருப்பு எறும்பு இருக்கும் அது அதிகமாக இருக்கனால எங்களுக்கு கொஞ்சம் நாங்கள் தொளிக்கிறப்பெல்லாம் கடிக்க ஆரம்பிக்கும் அதனால் நாங்கள் என்ன பண்ணுவோம் தண்ணியில் வந்து நாங்கள் ஃபுல்லாக கழுவி வாஷ் பண்ணதுக்கப்புறம் நாங்கள் எடுப்போம்.
The purpose of washing is not solely for insects. It also helps to extract the mace from the fruit. The women first remove the outer yellow fruit shell. The fruit shells are cleaned and later sold. Fresh shells are edible and can be made into jams or jellies. Dried fruit can be blended with nutmeg powder to be sold as a cheaper alternative. They then separate the good from the rotten ones. The good fruits are placed in water, rinsed and soaked for at least 15 minutes. Once they have soaked long enough, the mace covering will noticeably shrink and become much looser. This is the most time-consuming and delicate stage, separating the mace from the nutmeg without damaging it. They put their fingers in carefully to grasp the nut, then twist slightly and gently, and it snaps out. They must do it slowly.
ஃபஸ்ட் டைம் வந்து அப்பா அம்மா தான் பொரிச்சிட்டு இருந்தாங்க இப்போ தான் நான் 2 இயர்ஸாக தான் இதில் வந்து பொரிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சிருக்கேன் ஃபஸ்ட்டு எனக்கு அதை தொளிக்கிறப்பெல்லாம் வந்து கொஞ்சம் கஷ்டமாக இருக்கும் பூ வந்து உடச்சிருவேன் ஃபாஸ்ட்டாக இது வந்து மெதுவாக தான் தொளிக்கணும் நான் வந்து ஸ்பீடாக தொளிக்க ஆரம்பிச்சேன்னா பூவெல்லாம் உடைய ஆரம்பிச்சிடும் 2 மாதத்துக்கு அப்புறம் தான் வந்து எனக்கு அது கரெக்டாக பூ உடையாமல் நான் தொளிக்க ஆரம்பித்தேன் 2 மாதம் ட்ரைனிங் எடுத்ததுக்கப்புறம் தான் எனக்கு அது கரெக்டாக வந்துச்சு நான் இந்த மாதிரி தாமரை மொட்டு மாதிரி நல்லா இப்படி அமுத்தி பிடிச்சோம்னா இந்த மாதிரி மொக்கு மாதிரி ஆயிருங்கண்ணா. அது தனியாக இதுக்கப்புறம் நாங்கள் காய வச்சுருவோங்கண்ணா அதையே.
Today, it will take these women about 4 hours to finish plucking the mace and nutmeg, which is about 100 fruits per hour. The ones that have already fallen to the ground on their own do not need the same careful plucking. They're much looser and easier to separate because of the fungus they've developed. These will be half the price of the other fungus-free, fresher nutmegs. Gokila and the others have successfully cleaned all the flowers without breaking any of them. After the nutmeg and mace are separated, both spices need to be dried in the open sun. If the heat is too intense, the nut can crack, so after one day, farmers move it to the shade. Shade drying also preserves the aroma. Some farmers dry the nutmeg and mace in ovens, but Polachi farmers prefer to dry it in gentler conditions to preserve the structure. All the best mace and nutmeg without any fungi are then placed in separate drums, where they can remain in good condition for over a year. Not all nutmeg and mace are the same. The spices harvested in the West Indies, in places like Grenada, are lighter in colour and have a milder flavour. The more costly East Indian nutmeg and mace have a higher oil content, which gives the spices a stronger aroma and flavour. These spices from Polachi and its main competitor, the Kerala district, both fall under the East Indian category and can sell for double the price of other varieties.
Our mace is really thick. It is in the shape of a lotus bud. The shape itself is different. Since it is very thick, it doesn't break very quickly.
This is Ranjit. He's the owner of the nutmeg farm here in the Polachi district. Most of Ranjit's profit comes from the mace. It makes about 5 times as much as the nutmeg. Polachi's yield is 40% less than the Kerala district, but it has an advantage. The rains are less intense and less continuous, and low risk of fruit spoiling.
So these are the first class ones. So if you cut open, it's free from molds and it has a good aroma and fragrance. The spoiled ones will have a very foul smell. These ones right now they are costing around 480 rupees per kilo. The Polachi nuts, and the nuts that are from Kerala, they are only costing around 320 rupees.
While Polachi is already an ideal location to grow the spices, their high value is not fully the result of where they are grown, but rather how. Ranjit and other farmers have perfected the fruit to grow larger and thicker, more than double the size of another mace in India. It took Ranjit years to develop a hybrid variety that has given Polachi its competitive advantage. He also has a nursery where they grow hybrid seedlings.
This is a good one, it succeeded. See? Oh, wait, what happened? Erum, come this way.
Ranjit also uses the farming technique of intercropping, which means 2 crops share the soil to improve water retention in both. The ideal intercrop for Ranjit's nutmeg trees are coconut plants because they also provide the right amount of shade. But this premium quality was not always recognised or consistent with each farmer in the region. Whenever it came time to sell, Ranjit and the other Polachi farmers grew frustrated. They were dependent on the bigger cities' expertise and experience to help them sell their product. So, Ranjit and the other farmers came up with a plan. They would all follow similar techniques, separate the best quality, and set the price themselves. 2 years ago, they formed a cooperative and used similar growing methods. Collectively, they now grow about 500 acres of nutmeg and mace. In the global food industry, this is significant because local farmers who make some of the world's most expensive foods typically don't see the profits. Whether it's other harvesters here in India who scour ponds for foxnuts, only to make cents for every kilogram harvested, or small farmers harvesting green cardamom for hours by hand, only to use most of their profits to cover production costs. or workers in Bolivia fueling the global quinoa demand who can't afford to eat their own crop. The success of the Polachi cooperative has directly affected the quality of life for farmers and workers here, like Kokila.
அங்கே விட இங்கே தான் பெட்டராக இருக்குது. நான் வந்து மில்லில் ஒர்க் பண்ணிகிட்டு இருந்தேன், ஆப்ரேட்டராக இருந்தேன். அங்கே வந்து எனக்கு மந்த்லி வந்து 10,000 தான் சேல்ரி. எனக்கு அது பத்தலை. அது நாளைக்கு வந்து 250 ரூபா கிடைக்குது. அது கம்பேர் பண்ணும்போது எனக்கு இது கொஞ்சம் பெனிஃபிட்டாக இருக்குது. 10,000லாம் ஃபுட்டுக்கு எல்லாத்துக்கும் போக கம்மியாக தான் இருக்குது. அதனால் எனக்கு இது கொஞ்சம் பரவாயில்ல. இங்கேயே ஃபுட்டு நல்ல ஃபுட்டாக இருக்குது. அதனால் நான் இங்கேயே வந்துட்டேன்.
Recently, they achieved their highest rate for mace, selling to an Australian buyer for 3,200 rupees per kilo, 14% more than the aggregator rate. For the Polachi farmers, the cooperative made a big difference. They sell to buyers across the globe and recently sold 12 tons of nutmeg and mace to a Dutch company.
Among ourselves, as a community, we had multiplied the best planting material, and now it is literally called the Polachi variety. But the local traders from Kerala come, they ask for Polachi maize. So it is doing very well for us.
Today, Captain Gilles and his crew are setting out to catch over 20,000 pounds of something very valuable, anchovies. But once the fish come out of the water, time is of the essence. Since these anchovies stay fresh for only 24 hours, everyone must move quickly to set them on ice and head back to the coast where buyers eagerly wait.
Quando il pescatore ha il pesce nella rete, ci chiama la notte, dice ho pescato e ce lo porta.
In Giulio's hands, they'll become even more valuable. He will extract all the oil from the fish and make a sauce that is worth $160 per litre, which is 4 times more expensive than other popular fish sauces. But the process will take 3 years. Giulio needs to collect the sauce, drop by drop. So how do all these little fish get turned into sauce? And what makes it so expensive? Local fishermen head out to sea between April and November.
Quindi usciamo giornalmente, usciamo la sera e rientriamo la mattina.
After attracting the anchovies with lights, Captain Gilles and his crew use purse seine nets to catch them. The tightly woven nets are designed to trap the anchovies without entangling them.
Usiamo questi coppi grandi, un coppo grande per poter prendere il pescato, perché non lo puoi prendere ammassato perché si schiaccerebbe, si rovina la qualità del pescato, si rovina la carne. Quindi ne prendiamo un po' alla volta dalla rete in mare e lo mettiamo in queste, contenitori in plastica con acqua a 0 gradi e molto ghiaccio per fargli prendere ghiaccio e fare un'ottima conservazione e catena del freddo.
Because of how large the nets are, fishermen need to be highly experienced to use them effectively. To maintain the anchovies' quality and price tag, it's crucial that they don't get crushed or damaged in any way.
Facciamo questo mestiere tramandato da generazione. Ogni famiglia a Cetara, perché ci sono più famiglie a Cetara che fanno questa tipologia di pesca, poi dopo ha i propri segreti che tramanda da padre in figlio.
The bigger the anchovy, the more oil it will release, which helps result in the most flavourful sauce. To catch the biggest fish possible, Captain Gilles combines what he's learned from his father with new technology. Echo sounders not only help locate anchovies, but confirm their exact size and weight.
È un pesce da 9 cm, 9 cm e mezzo, vedi? 8 e 3, quindi una taglia decente come pesca delle alici. Perché le alici più sono grandi e più hanno prezzo. Le alici più piccole hanno un prezzo che possono girare da 10-15 euro attorno a una cassa.
Larger anchovies sell for between 25 and 30 euros per crate at Italian fish markets.
Quella colatura si arriva a 100 euro grazie al sacrificio che facciamo dei ragazzi che stanno a bordo.
When it comes to making high-quality colatura di alici, the Italian name for anchovy sauce, the freshness of the anchovy makes all the difference.
Tu senti il sapore del mare, il sapore del pesce, però non ce l'hai in bocca il pesce.
Giulio's family has been making colatura di alici since 1915. This is what most of his mornings look like during anchovy season. Giulio has just received this morning's catch.
Allora, vedete, prima cosa, il pesce di stamattina. Questa è la prima fase, cioè si chiama scapezzatura. Togliamo la testa e l'interiore in un solo colpo. Guardate, testa e interiore in un solo colpo. Da ragazzi noi facevamo la gara a chi faceva più veloce.
Once the anchovies have been cleaned, they're placed inside barrels full of salt.
Lo fa disidratare.
Giulio uses high-quality Italian salt from Sicily.
Perché il nonno usava il sale di Trapani e quindi usiamo anche noi il sale di Trapani.
After 24 hours in the salt, the anchovies are ready to be preserved and pressed.
Questa è la fase più importante, la salatura. E bisogna, come diceva mio nonno, bisogna farlo in silenzio. È così, ad uno, il pesce messo a pancia e schiena, verrà messo così, pancia e schiena, perché quando noi poi andremo a pressare non c'è vuoto nel pesce.
The anchovies are placed inside terzini, small barrels made from chestnut wood.
Se uno lavora in altre cose, secondo me non esce la colatura, esce un'altra cosa, esce un sapore particolare, diverso.
When the wood comes into contact with salt, it hardens, fully sealing the anchovies inside. Each barrel fits about 50 to 60 anchovies, depending on the size of the fish. The salt kickstarts the release of liquids inside the anchovies. It takes 3 years and about 50 to 60 pounds of fresh anchovies to produce just a litre of anchovy sauce. Making colatura di alici is a meticulous and time-consuming process, but one he thoroughly enjoys.
Diciamo che è quasi finito. Nonno diceva, perché non lo facciamo bello? Perché non lo facciamo diventare un principino? Ci facciamo una bella corona. E faceva questo. Adesso vi faccio vedere. Guarda, sale. E poi ci faceva la corona. Ecco qua. Adesso è finito.
What really brings the salt, anchovies and the barrel together is weighing everything down with a heavy stone.
Queste sono pietre che vedete un po' più lisce, prese a mare, che le prendeva mio nonno, mio padre, che usiamo ancora noi. Immaginate che questo liquido comincia a trapassare questi stadi di alici mature, si insaporisce ancora di più e vedremo che a goccia cola.
To check if the sauce is ready, Giulio will drill directly into the barrels.
Ci vorrà un po' di tempo perché potete ben capire che il terzino è 3 centimetri di spessore, quindi per entrare dentro questo affarino di 2 mm è un po' difficile.
The colatura di alici drips out of the barrel slowly. This is when Giulio can confirm the quality of the colour and aroma.
La colatura deve essere un ambrato scuro, molto scuro. Non senti il sapore, cioè l'odore del sale, ma senti il sapore dell'odore del pesce salato. Quella è la colatura.
There is no way Giulio can speed up the process if he doesn't want to ruin the sauce. It must come out at its own pace, drop by drop. This makes authentic colatura di alici a true investment, and the intensive labour involved in producing such small amounts every year has meant a higher price tag.
Mio padre e mio nonno vendevano a pochissimo. Quest'anno abbiamo venduto a 150 euro al litro.
The first batch of anchovies caught in early spring is transformed into colatura di alici by December, so the sauce has become a traditional part of celebrating winter holidays.
Per me colatura è sangue, è casa. Questo è il prodotto che si usava e si usa alla vigilia dell'Immacolato. E in ogni casa c'era questa tradizione di fare lo spaghetto con la colatura. La colatura d'alici al palato è flipper, perché la colatura tradizionale parte dal dolce al salato, c'è l'amaro, è un sapore completo secondo me.
Preserving this culture is a responsibility Giulio cherishes.
È la cosa più bella del lavoro che faccio, cioè ricordare le cose che faceva mio nonno e mio padre.
Catherine spent 13 years training to become a head cutter. She's had these tailoring shears her entire career. They're designed to effortlessly glide through cloth without being lifted up.
You have to concentrate, because if you don't, you might just cut into a very expensive piece of cloth.
Using a special tailor's code, Catherine draws chalk outlines to craft bespoke suits for the world's wealthiest clients.
Everybody you can think of in the public eye, from Churchill to Fred Astaire, will have discreetly had their garments made for them in Savile Row.
On this exclusive street, even ironing is an art form. A custom two-piece suit like this one can cost nearly £6,000 and takes 4 months to make. That's more than 5 times the price of a ready-to-wear suit from a high-end brand like Brooks Brothers. We travelled to the home of Bespoke Tailoring to find out what makes these suits so expensive. When buying a suit, there are 3 main categories: off the rack, made to measure, and bespoke. Off the rack suits come in standard sizes, while made to measure suits start from the same base pattern adjusted for each customer. But at Bespoke Ateliers on and around Savile Row in London's Mayfair district, tailors craft one-of-a-kind garments completely from scratch. Bespoke suits are infinitely customizable, but they take much longer to produce. The process requires close, personal interaction with the client. On Savile Row, you're not just paying for the suit, you're paying for the tailor.
Every tailor, like a hairdresser, has a different style, a different approach, so you just have to find the right one for you.
Catherine Sargent became the only female master tailor working on Savile Row after opening a shop on the street in 2016. Today, her shop is located within the so-called Golden Mile of Savile Row on nearby Brook Street. Catherine has worked with many high-profile clients over the years, most of whom she's not allowed to mention.
Made a coronation uniforms for a king, and I was flown to their country to have the fittings.
And not all are human.
We have fitted out their 4-legged friend before, so yeah, a bespoke dog coat with a couple of those.
To become a member of the Savile Row Bespoke Association, tailors must work within a specific area of London, offer 2,000 different fabrics, and cut each suit from a unique paper pattern.
Even a try-on is a major event.
The months-long suit-making process starts with the consultation, a chance for the tailor to get to know their client and their needs. Today, her client is Richard Stoppard, a local finance executive who is looking to buy his very first bespoke suit from Savile Row.
I really wanted to treat myself to something that I thought gave me a little bit more gravitas, a little bit more standing. I'm not going to lie and say that it's a small amount of money, but I see it as a smart investment.
Early on, Catherine establishes basic details like the suit type and materials. But she also takes time to develop a relationship with each client by asking specific personal questions.
There's a person at the heart of the creation. It's not just the tailor and their interpretation. You know, you're making something that's really truly bespoke.
She says the only struggle is managing expectations.
Every man that I make a suit for wants to look like James Bond. It shouldn't be like an intimidating experience. It should be really like super relaxed and very, informative.
During the first meeting, she carefully takes the client's measurements. With these, Catherine crafts the most crucial piece of the bespoke suit, the paper pattern. Patterns are two-dimensional representations of each garment with instructions on how pieces should fit together. Catherine keeps every client's pattern on hand for future orders.
Pattern cutting, fitting, problem solving, it's always shapes and dimensions 2D to 3D, and I'm kind of like a tailoring nerd in that way.
Catherine works meticulously to ensure each piece is drawn to scale. But as precise as she is here, sometimes the client's size may change during the process.
You measure somebody and then they come for a fitting and they've changed shape, lost weight or gained weight, and the measurements change, but we make the garments and the patterns so we can adapt them for that.
Once she's done sketching, she carefully cuts out each shape.
These are my paper shears. Every time we do a fitting, we take it from 3D to 2D and back again. So we're constantly working on the pattern and altering the pattern.
Catherine uses these initial patterns to figure out how much cloth she needs. The most commonly used fabric is British wool.
You can shape it, you can stretch it, you can shrink it. It is a joy to work with.
She gets most of her fabrics from storied London cloth merchants, like Holland and Sherry, where the fabrics are often locally sourced. A typical jacket made from British wool starts at around £4,350. But some materials can boost the price significantly, like cashmere or vicuña wool from Peru.
That cloth is probably the most expensive cloth in the world, and for an overcoat you would be talking upwards of £20,000.
Catherine says she prefers robust materials because her goal is to create a suit that lasts for decades. The next step is striking or marking up the cloth with a sharpened piece of tailor's chalk.
With a piece of chalk, you can get a really nice sharp edge and get a really lovely curve. You tend to do those curves freehand.
Catherine leaves extra cloth on the edges in case she needs to lengthen it. It's called the inlay, and it remains inside the final suit, so the garment can be altered even years later if needed.
So a garment that's made by hand, by us, would hopefully last 10, 15, 20 years, even longer than that if people take care of their clothes.
Once the fabric is marked, she cuts out the rough shape of the suit. On Savile Row, a master cutter is never without their high-quality steel scissors.
My tailoring shears I've had for over 25 years. I've never had them sharpened. They've sort of become an extension of you, so I really don't want to get any new ones. I think they'll probably last me throughout my career. The tailoring shears are designed to glide, so when you cut the cloth, you're not actually lifting the shears up in the air. It allows you to really get a nice control, a nice straight line over the cloth. For me, this is the sort of most relaxing, easiest part of the job. Just the noise is very satisfying. You've sort of accomplished something, you've made a pattern, and you're now going to see this garment come together.
At this stage, Catherine hands this bundle over to her apprentice, Emma Warner. Working off of Catherine's chalk guidelines, Emma does a first pressing of the fabric and arranges the pieces. Then she uses a thick white thread called basting thread to hand-stitch the cut pieces of cloth together and shape it into a wearable garment.
I'm going to use the hem for the top part because you want to keep the shape in the jacket. If it's canvas like this, you will have the shape of the bust in the canvas more than if you would do it on the flat. So that's why we're using it now. But then later we also use it to press the collar because the collar is also on a round.
This basted suit is what the client tries on at the first fitting. The loose stitching allows Catherine to easily take it apart and make any necessary adjustments.
To make sure that it's exactly as they want it to be before we go ahead and take it further. How's it feel under the arms?
Yes, plenty of
Is it
room,
comfortable?
I think, yeah.
It's not too low.
No.
Can you move around freely?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. This one looks good. This one looks a little bit short, doesn't it?
During the first fitting, Catherine marks any adjustments on the cloth in chalk using a special tailoring code.
A straight line would mean shorten or take in, and a line with a cross like that would mean let out or lengthen.
Once the client is happy, the garment is broken down and flattened again. Catherine updates the paper pattern to reflect any changes. For bespoke suits, clients usually come in for 2 or 3 fittings, during which minute adjustments are made to make sure every measurement is exactly right. After weeks of back and forth, the suit finally starts to take shape. At this stage, tailors add wool padding to the shoulders and the collar to give the suit its structure.
We actually put shape into the garment at this point, so when you try it on next time, you'll just see that it's got a little bit more form to it. It's not a flat shape.
Once the client and the tailor are happy with the suit, it's sent out for finishing, in which artisans attach the lining and stitch the edges. The suit then needs to be pressed to make sure it's perfectly crisp and flat for the client. It might look like normal ironing, but this step is essential to maintaining Savile Row's high standards. And there are few in the business who can press a garment like George.
I was taught by a presser in which he was doing it for 60 years, so I suppose you could say that I inherited 60 years of experience. There's no one we haven't pressed for, and we currently press for around about 95% of the industry at the moment.
As with every other stage of the tailoring, the presser pays close attention to detail, making sure there's not a single wrinkle in any of the fabric.
Give the back drape a really nice clean finish, and the back of the sleeves, the fullness are all pressed out really nicely, and now we'll concentrate back on the front again and just complete the front by pressing these lapel edges and making sure we've got a good decent crease down here and a natural roll towards the end. That's pretty much it.
After months of work, Richard returns one last time to try on the final suit and to make sure everything is just as he imagined.
I think it's interesting on how wearing the suit makes me feel. At the moment, slightly emboldened, you know, luxuriant. It's an interesting, sort of quite emotional experience, if I'm honest.
You can normally tell as soon as they put something on, like they just kind of like their posture might be a little bit different. Looking at something on the body in the mirror for the first time when it's completely finished can be quite daunting, but once they've left the building with the garments and they've started wearing them, we quite often get good feedback saying, oh my gosh, it's really brilliant, and people stop me and ask me where did I get the suit made.
Catherine started as an apprentice in 1996, and by 2016 she had made history by becoming the first female head cutter and master tailor on Savile Row. Now, others are following in her footsteps. The Savile Row Bespoke Association says it's added more than 50 apprentices since 2004, and Catherine has noticed more women in this new crop of aspiring master tailors.
I think gender should not be a barrier to following your passion and your love for this craft. So many women are now becoming tailors and cutters, so it's really, really great to see. It's something I'm personally very proud of. A lot of the customers are still male, and the perception, I think, from a lot of the houses are that cutters should therefore be male. That doesn't matter at all to me, and we've proved that it does work, and a woman can do this job equally as well as any man, if not sometimes better.
This massive 50-kilogram Nile perch is a rare catch for these Ugandan fishers. But it's not the fish meat that will make them the most money. It's this balloon-like internal organ known as a fish maw or a swim bladder. Dried fish maws can sell for up to $800 a pound, but older maws like this one from a large slate cod croaker are valued as high as $4,000 for a single piece.
Wegamba esinga obaka nga mene pizza tejja naye kati yafuuka gold kyobola lwaki sigiriya.
Fishers sell it to Chinese markets around the world where people eat it for its health benefits and supposed anti-aging properties. But the supply chain in China is facing a big problem. Due to overfishing in Chinese waters, connoisseurs are now looking abroad to places like Uganda for fish maw. The organ is so prized that smuggling and theft are rampant in the industry. So why is fishing for maw worth the risk? And why is it so expensive? Po Wing Hong Food Market in New York City's Chinatown has been selling fish maw ever since it first opened in 1980. Today it specialises in rare dried seafood delicacies. Sophia Tsao runs this shop with her parents. She says that these days fish maw is so rare that they have to buy it in bulk as soon as it becomes available.
Usually we request a certain size and certain type of fish maw because we know what sells the best, and we usually maybe get 50% of what we request because the demand is so high.
Fish maw or swim bladder is an organ that enables fish to control their buoyancy. Fish maw is traditionally considered one of the 4 treasures of Cantonese cuisine, along with shark fin, abalone and sea cucumber. Zhao Xiong, who has worked for Po Wing Hong for 10 years, supervises the dried seafood department. He's an expert on the 4 treasures.
係非洲嘅淡水鱸魚膠嚟嘅。一般嘅花膠咧係稍微有一種偏黃，跟住咧佢係有一種非常之半透明嘅咁樣一種狀態喺度，所以咧佢嘅年份咧越耐咧佢嘅花膠係越厚。 跟住咧，佢所含嘅膠原同埋蛋白質咧係非常之豐富，同埋咧佢所含咧各種嘅微生物咧、磷咧、鈣咧呢啲微生物特別豐富啲。
The store orders all of its fish maw from a USDA certified broker who works directly with traders and fishers in Southeast Asia, South America, and Africa.
Usually when we order fish maw, it's about 30 to 50 pounds per case, and general prices are between 4,000 to 8,000 depending on the quality of the fish maw.
They resell it for anywhere from $200 to $800 per pound, depending on the type and quality. The Chinese bahaba, or large yellow croaker, was a main source of fish maw for decades. But in 1989, the Chinese government designated it a Grade 2 state-protected species. And in 2006, the International Union for Conservation of Nature also assessed the fish as critically endangered. Today, the majority of fish maw is imported from other countries, including Uganda, where fishing for an invasive species called Nile perch on Lake Victoria has become a lucrative business for locals like Amber Francis. It's early morning on Kisima One Island in Jinja. Amber is packing up his bait and hooks and preparing his boat to set out on Lake Victoria. He's worked as a fisher here for the past 10 years. He says Nile perch sold for much cheaper when he first started, before there was demand for the bladders. The islands in the area around Jinja, like Kisima, are used as a base for the estimated 2,000 or so fishers in the area. While Ugandans don't typically eat fish maw themselves, Amber has tried it and loves it.
Yeah, we used to eat it and we enjoyed it a lot. Other people sometime back they used to throw them away. Not until they came to realize that it's tasty, it's good. That's when they started to consume it.
Amber says he can make around $4,000 a month selling fish maw to traders, depending on the size of his catch.
Each kilo, they can buy it at 25,000, only a kilo. When I get that one, which weighs like 10 kilograms, that's 250, which is a lot of money in Uganda.
But finding the biggest fish requires some special tricks and knowing where to look.
The weather right now is good for fishing, but in 2 to 3 hours, actually, the water will be rough.
He focuses on the deep water, and he baits his hooks with a live young catfish, known locally as ensuma. If the water is too cold, the ensuma can die instantly, and Nile perch won't go after dead fish. Each hook is demarcated with a bottle, so he knows which lines belong to him. Because these fish are so valuable, theft is also an issue on the lake.
Unfortunately, you go there, you find nothing, when everything was taken by those thieves. Yeah.
Once he's baited his lines, he leaves them in the water and returns to the island to rest until evening.
Now we are going to rest for some time, like 3 to 4 hours. After, we come back and check our hooks, what we have put there, to see whether there's Nile perch on it.
Amber says he typically catches 6 or 7 fish per day, usually all weighing under 20 kilograms. The biggest one he has ever caught was a massive 98 kilograms.
I feel good when it pulls me. Yeah, actually I enjoy it. It's like a game to me.
Today he caught only 6 fish, but the biggest one was about 30 kilograms.
Expected to go to get more than this. Yeah, actually it's a bad day to me.
The fishers don't remove the bladders themselves. Tomorrow, Amber will sell his fish directly to the trader, who hired him at the local market in Matsusaka. Amber's boss is Hakim Magumba, who has been working in the fishing industry for about 23 years. He previously traded tilapia to buyers in Kenya, but he now works with Nile perch because it's much more profitable.
Because I fish because I need fish more. Because fish more is like gold to my side. You understand? We used to throw it back. We used to throw the bladder because it was no sense. We wanted that meat, but nowadays, money.
Hakim says he has 22 boats and 30 fishers like Amber working for him. Once they deliver the fish to him, they are weighed, sorted and priced based on their size.
This fish weighs 12 kilos. After weighing, we are going to cut it and see the bladder which is in it.
The bladders must be removed and cleaned by hand.
We sell it at the 500,000 Ugandan shillings.
The rest of the fish doesn't go to waste. Hakim sells it to the locals in Uganda, where it's a popular delicacy. The more will eventually make its way to Chinese exporters who dry it and ship it to Hong Kong and other locations worldwide. Hakim is just one of many traders in the area trying to make a living in Fishmore with competitors all around him.
We have like people from Kenya, people from TZ, their own competitors. Very many. Very many.
Aside from the competition, Hakim says one of the biggest challenges the fishers in Uganda face is run-ins with local authorities.
The guys who are in business of fishing, they don't have the license. So when you don't have license, you are caught with the soldiers.
Crime is also an issue on land, according to Hakim. He says some of his colleagues have been robbed while transporting their goods to Chinese buyers.
Theft is too much. Mostly on the loads when you're taking it to the Chinese.
And getting into the industry is costly. Not everyone can afford the initial investment of equipment, which includes a government-licensed boat, an engine, plus regulation hooks and bait.
Yeah, actually it requires a lot of capital, yeah, to deal in fishing Nile perch. Like me as a fisherman, just one boat I require like 15 million shillings.
Overfishing has already been detrimental to many fish species around the world. A large croaker in Mexico's Gulf of California called the totoaba is now in danger of extinction due to the fishmore trade. But this fish, often dubbed the cocaine of the sea, is still illegally trafficked into China. In April 2023, US Customs seized $2.7 million worth of Totoaba fish maw hidden in a shipment of frozen fish fillets in Arizona. Even so, demand for fish maw is not slowing down. On a weekday morning at Po Wing Hong, the aisles are as busy as ever, with customers scouring the shelves for dried seafood products as soon as they open. While fish maw is more popular among the older generations, Sophia says younger people have started incorporating it into their diets as well.
I feel that nowadays a lot of younger people are eating fish maw because it reminds them of dishes that they have in the past, and it's a little bit of nostalgia. Also, they want to embrace their culture and relearn the dishes that are really traditional.
And that rare $4,000 fish maw they have on hand, it's so special to Po Wing Hong that it's not even for sale.
We keep it just as a keepsake.
This massive Trudon candle will set you back $660. Sylvie uses this contraption to make sure each of the 5 wicks is perfectly straight as she fills the glass container with specially formulated wax.
Mieux elle est droite et centrée, plus le brûlage sera parfait.
That's why Christine will spend the 2.5 hours it takes to straighten 3,000 wicks on these smaller candles by hand. And while these cost less than the 5-wick candle, at $52 each, they're still more than 3 times the price of a $17 Yankee candle of similar size. Every step of the process at Trudon's candle factory in Normandy, France, has been honed over 350 years to create candles that burn evenly, smoke-free, and don't sputter. So what made these candles good enough for Marie Antoinette, and why are they so expensive? Trudon goes back to 1643, and back then, its products served an essential purpose.
Nous étions les ampoules, sans doute les meilleures, à l'époque.
You could find the bright white, clean-burning candles everywhere, from the churches of Paris to Marie Antoinette's chambers in Versailles.
On émane d'un savoir-faire qui répondait à un véritable besoin d'éclairage. Tout ceci a été complètement chamboulé, évidemment, par le cours de l'histoire.
The basics of candle making are simple. Pour melted wax into a glass with a wick. But a luxury candle must take those base components and elevate them. Many cheaper candles use a base of petroleum-based paraffin wax, while luxury brands tend to opt for natural waxes. Up until 2018, Trudon used blends featuring beeswax in its candles.
Ici, la cire d'abeille, on a décidé de ne plus en utiliser. Donc c'est une cire animale qui ne nous permet pas de faire des produits véganes déjà.
Now, the company uses some paraffin wax, but relies on vegetable oil for most of its candles.
Les huiles de base qu'on utilise sont surtout l'huile de colza, l'huile de tournesol, sur des huiles hydrogénées, puisqu'il faut qu'on utilise des supports avec des points de fusion assez élevés.
The wax melts overnight, and fragrances are added in the morning, right before pouring. Trudon's most popular scented candle is filled by machine. But its highest-end offerings, like this $660 great-size candle, are filled by hand.
Alors le plus difficile, on va dire, c'est de porter les seaux.
Sylvie Lemeur glues 5 large wicks to the bottom of the jar with a squeeze of silicone.
Ensuite, nous mettons le stop mesh, c'est-à-dire c'est ce qui garantit que la bougie ne va pas exploser et arriver au fond. Il faut toujours qu'on ait un stop.
And when the wicks are dry, in goes the wax.
En général, ça représente 7 kg de matière dans un seau. Parce que la grande bougie se travaille sur 2 jours.
As the wax dries, it constricts, leaving space around the edges and deformities that require a second pour. It takes hours to dry completely, but there's really only one way to know.
On ne peut pas faire du visuel, faut toucher. Parce qu'il faut savoir qu'une bougie, il faut la comprendre pour la travailler. Parce qu'elle est comme nous, elle est vivante.
But before Sylvie can complete the second pour, it's time to pinch the wicks. And same goes for the small versions.
On est sur l'étape pinçage. C'est l'étape la plus importante avant le deuxième coulage. C'est l'étape où on va devoir centrer la mèche du mieux possible.
Christine tugs and straightens each wick.
Il n'existe pas encore de machine qui redresse les mèches individuellement. Le but, c'est que la mèche ne se rétracte pas à l'intérieur. D'où l'importance de bien la redresser et de bien la tirer vers le haut.
Crooked or wilted wicks can affect the evenness of the burn.
Il n'y a pas d'incident, c'est vraiment quand elle se consume, voilà, le fait qu'elle soit droite et centrée, ça va brûler la cire dans sa totalité. Il n'y aura pas un côté qui va brûler plus que l'autre.
And not all wicks are created equal. The lab optimizes wick sizes based on the chemical formulas of the different scents. But not all of Trudon's offerings are meant to be burned, even when they do have wicks.
En fait, ça brûlerait très mal parce que vu la mèche, on arriverait peut-être à brûler un peu la tête.
Sylvia Bernal has worked at Trudon for 3 years, but she has more than a decade of experience making wax busts. The bust collection is unique to Trudon. It's a collaboration with the French National Museum Council, which provided the first molds.
Il reste des reproductions à l'échelle 1 de bustes que vous pouvez voir dans certains musées français et même parfois à l'étranger.
But even if they'll never see a flame, these wax sculptures are still created with the same attention to detail as Trudon's more traditional offerings.
Cela reste des bougies. Tous ces bustes ont une mèche sur le haut de leur tête.
Et on va lui glisser une mèche. Toc. Donc là, c'est le démoulage d'un buste. Napoléon sort de sa coquille. Je vais le poser là.
But the mold only does part of the work.
Maintenant, on va attaquer la finition. Là, en fait, je le fignole un peu parce que comme c'est un moule en 2 parties, il y a toujours les arêtes du moule sur les côtés. Donc, j'enlève tout ça, toutes les petites marques qu'il peut y avoir. On essaye de le lisser au maximum.
She can also add material.
Il y a un trou qui ne me plaît pas trop. Je le rebouche. En espérant que ça ne se voie pas trop.
And if there's a hole too big to fill or some other major flaw,
on le met dans la petite casserole là-bas et on le refond.
The busts are made from paraffin wax, sometimes with a little added support, a taper candle to hold everything in place.
Toc. Alors c'est pas la mèche, hein, c'est juste sa colonne vertébrale.
One of the final steps is lightly melting the foot of the bust on a hot plate to flatten it.
Pour que le pied soit régulier, stable et lisse.
Mais ce sont avant tout des objets qui sont faits pour être collectionnés et non pas brûlés. On n'aurait pas forcément envie d'un buste en plâtre de Napoléon chez soi, et le simple fait qu'il soit en cire lui prodigue un décalage et rend l'objet intéressant.
Nathalie Egbert is working on improving Trudon's wax formulas even further. Here, candles burn in olfactory chambers all day long. She periodically evaluates their scent and tests how well they burn.
On doit évaluer les bougies toutes les 4 heures. Donc on les allume le matin à 8h30, on les évalue à 12h30, on les rallume à 1h30, on les évalue à 5h30.
Evaluating the smell of new candles is the most subjective part of her job.
Alors ici, on va évaluer les bougies en combustion, donc c'est-à-dire la fragrance qui se dégage à chaud des produits finis. Là, on est au début de la combustion et on a plutôt les notes assez volatiles, type citrus, agreste, des notes un peu fleurs d'oranger, ylang, fleuries.
She notes her feedback and works with the company's various development teams to perfect the formula.
Le développement du produit fini comprend l'évaluation olfactive, mais aussi la qualité de brûlage, donc la hauteur de flamme, la cire qui fond bien. On a des critères de qualité assez spécifiques. Donc le développement au laboratoire d'une bougie va nous prendre presque 1 mois.
The lab is also responsible for quality control. It's this attention to detail that sets luxury candles apart. The global luxury candle market is expected to be worth more than $1 billion by 2030.
Aujourd'hui, la demande pour des bougies parfumées dites de luxe est très élevée. Celle pour laquelle nous sommes le plus connus coûte 90 €. On pourrait faire une analogie avec d'autres produits sur le marché, que ce soit un sac, de la maroquinerie ou un prêt-à-porter sophistiqué de luxe. Donc il y a cette notion d'héritage, de respect de ce qui a été fait, pour arriver à le faire vivre à l'instant présent et dans le futur. Donc c'est une sorte de révérence fondamentale qui est importante.
This grey, bulbous fungus has infected this ear of corn, and it's deliberate. Infected corn can sell for 40 times more than non-mouldy ones. Its official name is Huitlacoche. But for years, American farmers called this infection the devil's corn and corn smut, as it relentlessly destroyed crops and farming equipment. Meanwhile, the fungus has been a local delicacy in Mexico since the time of the Aztecs.
Muchos dicen que de los dioses, no, pues yo no conocí a los dioses. Yo lo único que les podría decir pues que es un producto dulce. Está dulcecito, suavecito.
Now that even Michelin-starred restaurants in the US are serving it, the fungus has been elevated with names like black gold and Mexican truffle. Its export price has doubled in the last 3 years, going from $15 in 2020 to selling for just over $40 a pound today. So, is infecting corn crops paying off for Mexican farmers? And what exactly makes Huitlacoche so expensive?
Creo que todos, la primera vez que probamos el Huitlacoche, nos quedamos sorprendidos porque no acabas de entender exactamente qué es. Si no está el hongo y no está el maíz. Entonces te estás comiendo las dos cosas.
These days, Huitlacoche is most commonly served in quesadillas.
Justamente en Oaxaca, muy niña, y fue de una forma muy tradicional con quesadillas y el famoso quesillo de Oaxaca. Y me sorprendió el color, sobre todo morder una quesadilla y que salga negro de esa quesadilla. Pero bueno, el sabor era sutil, era dulce, aromático.
Locals like Lorena have been eating for years what fine diners in the US are just now starting to enjoy. And this new audience has created a business opportunity for Mexican farmers like Emilio and his son Heriberto.
Pues descansamos solamente cuando se nos llega a tocar un mal imprevisto, que en parte se nos cae una granizada, que se echa a perder el Huitlacoche, en partes también que nos falla el líquido. Pero de ahí normalmente son todos los días, porque el mercado y los clientes quieren todos los días.
Even though Huitlacoche is a disease and technically rotting the corn, it's still crucial to harvest it before it becomes too rotten.
Lo tenemos que estar cortando cuando el Huitlacoche esté intacto, pero cuando el Huitlacoche ya se nos está pasando, ya está generando más agua y ya es pérdida para nosotros. Ya lo vendemos a mitad de precio, incluso hasta más barato.
The best time to find this local favourite is during Mexico's rainy season, since the heavy wind and rain causes wounds in the corn the fungus can infect. Huitlacoche only affects unpollinated and damaged corn. When the fungus first forms out of the corn kernels, it starts out a yellowish-white colour before turning grey with a smooth texture. This is the ideal colour and texture for customers. As the Huitlacoche continues to swell and form into galls, it turns black and eventually bursts open to release a black powder. It takes 2 to 4 weeks for the infection to take hold and for the galls to form. This means farmers must carefully monitor crops to harvest Huitlacoche at the exact right time and maximize its brief shelf life.
Lo tenemos blanco todavía, que está como blanco. Lo tenemos de garantía 5 o 7 días de vida anaquel. Todavía normal, porque todavía está blanco el grano. La textura del huitlacoche está blandito, está suavecito. Entonces lo que procuramos que no se nos maltrate y nos haga negro. Es por eso que se nos manchan las manos, porque ya está un poquito negro y lo estamos maltratando, ya se nos está pasando. Estamos produciendo alrededor de 3 toneladas por semana.
While this demand once outpaced the supply, things have changed ever since farmers found a way to infect crops year-round. Partnering with scientists to isolate the fungus and inject it directly into the corn.
Decimos a los dueños, como vamos a hablar que ya vamos a inocular, que le decimos a los dueños, 15 días antes compramos la milpa y le decimos ya no metas nada de insecticidas, nada de todo, para que no vaya a fallar en la cuestión de que cuando se inocula la cepa, que no se muera. Porque si tiene tantito líquido, tantito residuos de veneno, se puede morir el inóculo.
Changes in temperature can also render the injection liquid useless, so workers must handle it with care.
El líquido nos debe de entregar el doctor, siempre nos lo entrega alrededor de las 5 o 6 de la mañana, para que a las 12 o 1 de la tarde le estemos parando todos los inyectadores por el calor. Nosotros acá con mi papá y mi hermano, mi cuñado que inyectamos, lo usamos con hieleras portátiles. ¿Para qué? Para que en el momento de que a las 11, 12 a más tardar que estamos inyectando, le metemos hielo para que el proceso que tiene de la hielera, que llevamos el galón a la jeringa que vamos inoculando o inyectando, se calienta tanto con el calor de la planta y el calor corporal. Entonces lo que hacemos es meterle hielo para que siempre esté frío y no se muera el micelio y no se muera todo el inóculo que vamos inyectando, porque lo que queremos es que el calor no nos coma. Si el calor nos llega a comer el producto, se empieza a descomponer tanto el líquido.
However, if the liquid gets too cold or freezes, that can also kill the fungi, so balance is key. Heriberto and his father also take measures to protect themselves before entering the cornfields. They wear long sleeves since the prickly hairs on the corn stalks can cause rashes.
Y proteger a la planta, sobre todo, como le expliqué, poner cubrebocas y que hasta el momento de que estemos limpiando todo nuestro instrumento de inyección, que esté limpio, que no tenga nada, y cambiar sobre todo las agujas. Cada que vamos a inyectar hay que cambiarlas, porque las agujas son desechables. Igual es como una persona, cuando la inyectan se desecha todo. Así también las agujas se desechan todo el tiempo. Tenemos en ocasiones andamos trayendo un recipiente o una bolsita, las recolectamos y las tiramos.
The most mature plants are injected first, before they can pollinate each other. But injecting the corn is an art, and it doesn't always go perfectly.
Aunque sea un experto en inyectar, no se hace al 100% todo completamente. 70-80% de producción, porque no todas las mazorcas se hacen a un 100%. Aquí tenemos pérdida. El error fue un error humano, que el piquete estuvo un poco arriba y no se llegó a poner el piquete hasta adentro. Por eso es que está todo el huitlacoche está en las hojas, porque el líquido quedó de fuera. Y en sí sacamos a un 100% de calidad y todo. Y en no, es basura, solamente es para el ganadero.
Despite how delicate the injection method is, it still has a significantly higher success rate than waiting for Huitlacoche to form naturally. Without refrigeration, Huitlacoche only stays fresh for 1 or 2 days, and any changes in temperature or humidity can cause it to become increasingly dry. So sending a less mature white-grey Huitlacoche to the market is essential for Emilio and Heriberto if they want to make a profit. While some producers now process Huitlacoche to be canned, which extends its shelf life and, in some instances, lowers its price, fresh Huitlacoche is still the most popular choice, since that's what customers prefer. Smaller producers also don't always have the resources to preserve their Huitlacoche via canning. Instead, they typically sell directly to vendors at wholesale markets. Here at the Santa Rita market in Cuautla, depending on the supply, Huitlacoche sells for 20 pesos to 50 pesos a kilo.
Que ella se nos está agarrando de 100 y tantos kilos diarios, es en la mañana.
Many of the buyers here are local vendors who cook and sell traditional dishes outside, but also high-end restaurants who serve Huitlacoche in a variety of ways.
Nosotros lo conseguimos. La idea es siempre tratar con productores locales. El 75% de la carta está basada en hongos. Es uno de nuestros platillos estrellas, la mazorca de Huitlacoche. También lo usamos en bebidas.
Although Huitlacoche has been a local favourite for centuries now, the international culinary world has only just begun to admire it. US farmers considered the fungus a major agricultural problem, with studies from as early as the late 1800s looking into how to eradicate the fungus. Now, Michelin-starred restaurants like Osito in San Francisco are starting to add the fungus to their $295 tasting menu. But for chefs outside of Mexico, getting fresh Huitlacoche is a big challenge, and part of why the price jumps so much once it crosses the border.
De ese precio base que el productor vende al primer intermediario, estamos hablando que puede haber una diferencia de hasta el 60 o 70%.
In the US, Huitlacoche imported from Mexico has more than doubled in cost, going from $15 to $20 a pound in 2020 to around $40 a pound today. Despite the costs and limited shelf life, many people, particularly chefs, are eager to get their hands on the Mexican truffle. Most of this demand is supplied by the Huitlacoche that is manually infected by humans. Thanks to Martinez Carrera and other scientists, Mexico now produces 1,500 tons of Huitlacoche a year. Most of this supply comes from much bigger farms than Emilio's.
O sea que sembramos poquito, nosotros sembramos media hectárea a la semana y ellos siembran 2 hectáreas al día. Pues esos son los que llegan, tapizan el de Huitlacoche el mercado.
Meanwhile, naturally grown Huitlacoche is getting rarer and rarer. The rise of hybrid crops, as well as pesticides, has made it significantly harder for the fungus to take hold naturally.
Originalmente, el precio que tenía el Huitlacoche, digamos, el siglo pasado, en los años 50, era muy alto. ¿Por qué? Porque los campesinos lo que hacían era, buscaban en las plantaciones de maíz las plantas que naturalmente se infectaban de Huitlacoche, y la demanda era muy grande y los costos eran muy altos.
Today, the prices are actually going down. While injected crops have made it easier for large-scale producers to meet the international demand, they've also made the corn more accessible to locals and created a more competitive market.
Ya, bueno, llega hasta ya 12 pesos, 10 pesos en el mercado. Entonces no le vemos futuro, pero también no podemos hacer otra cosa por ahorita.
It takes up to 5,000 kilograms of these flowers to make just 1 kilo of Bulgarian Rose Oil. It's worth it because luxury brands will pay top dollar to put the oil in their perfumes. A single kilogram of oil can sell for $15,000.
It adds a little je ne sais quoi, and it's true, it's so complex to describe this. It is citrusy, it is fruity, it is green, it's quite magical.
And though demand is high, there's still a problem: Harvesters have only a few weeks all year to gather about 450 tons of roses to satisfy the luxury perfume industry's demand. So why do brands like Tom Ford and Louis Vuitton clamour for their share of Bulgarian rose oil, and why is it so expensive? The sun rises over this farm in Bulgaria's Rose Valley. But in this serene landscape, harvesters like Figan have been rushing since 5 a.m. to collect as many roses as they can. They only have a few weeks until the roses wilt and become unusable. And a limited supply means a higher price tag. The more flowers harvested in the morning hours, the better, because that's when the petals have the highest oil concentration. Bulgarian roses, also known as damask roses, have a particularly low oil content compared to other rose varieties, so it's vital to extract as much oil as possible. Once there are enough bags of roses to fill a truckload, they're delivered to the distillery. To extract the highest concentration of rose oil, the petals must be distilled immediately after harvesting.
Дистилацията не само на същия ден, не може 2-3 часа не може да стои, за да може маслото да е качествено, рандемана да е добър, миризмата да е добра, да е ароматна и така нататък.
The longer producers wait, the less potent and therefore less valuable their oil becomes. Agroproduct employs about 120 people during the brief harvesting season and says it spends an average of $8,000 per kilo of oil on labour. But that kilo can be sold for more than 1.5 times that amount.
See, it's only very few here, because as soon as they have a little truckload, we have the truck just behind us there, they are taken to the factory right away. So this is very important, especially in Bulgaria. They're very good at that.
That's Christophe Lodamiel. He's a master perfumer who's created scents for brands like Ralph Lauren and Tom Ford. He's at the distillery today on a consulting visit.
They take those bags and we can see that little truck going to the factory, and they're going to be extracted right away, because it does make a difference if you wait 1 or 2 days, etc.
Once the roses arrive at the distillery, workers must move quickly. They weigh the petals and pour them into the distillation vat. Thousands of soft pink petals are mixed with water and boiled down to this colourless sludge.
Розовото масло, за да стане за да е по-скъпо, това е защото ние се трудим повече, повече хора ни трябва за полето, за да оберат в по-малко време от часове повече свят, за да дойде по-бързо в дистилерията, за да може да изваряваме.
Every part of this process is controlled. The steam is exactly 105 degrees Celsius and the pressure at 5.5 bar gauge. Agroproduct says these measurements optimize the quality of its rose oil, and the consistency makes its product more reliable. The mixture flows through several distillation apparatuses before the oil can finally be separated from the water. For a single kilogram of rose oil, producers need to harvest and process as much as 5,000 kilograms of Bulgarian rose petals.
You see this bottle right here? This is what you get if you harvest this during a whole season from 3 rows. You get just this bottle. 1 kilo is this. So 4 of those goes in here. Voila.
Bulgarian rose oil is sought after by established luxury fragrance houses such as Tom Ford and Louis Vuitton, as well as newer shops like Gloss Moderne.
The rose is a rose is a rose, unless of course it's a Bulgarian rose. So we've smelled a lot of different roses, and I actually wasn't a fan of too many different rose fragrances before. I felt like they smelled like my grandmother, and so when we smelled this, it actually smelled like as if you had a bouquet of roses, and it smelled like a fresh rose.
So, here we are. So this is the production that just happened. It's straight from the factory in this raw bottle. This is so potent. This is our final release magical when it's really fresh. So some of it is a bit offensive, like stringent or almost aggressive because it's so fresh. And then in the older one, the aged one, it's like a nice wine.
Tremendous difference.
Yeah, bon. Hopefully, because that's what we tell everybody.
After the oil has been aged for at least 3 months, it can finally be incorporated into perfumes. Kuen says the unique scent profile of Bulgarian rose oil makes it worthy of its high price point.
We pay between $10,000 to $15,000 per kilo for Bulgarian rose oil. And that's the pure Bulgarian rose oil, undiluted. I feel it's definitely worth the price. It's extremely unique.
Studies have found more than 300 compounds in damask rose oil, making it more complex than other varieties. The damask rose, or Rosa damascena, originated in the Middle East, where its oil has been extracted since the 7th century. Around 400 years ago, the farmers began cultivating these roses in what's now known as Bulgaria's Rose Valley.
And this is one particular thing about this valley, is that it's cold and wet. If you look at other rose regions in the world, some are cold but dry, some are not as high as here. So this is very particular of this terroir here in Bulgaria and gives this richness of the oil.
The cooler spring temperatures prevent the rose petals from forming a protective wax, and the humidity allows higher oil saturation in the rose. This year, the season was delayed a couple of weeks because of unexpected rainfall and colder than usual temperatures. Ironically, humidity and cool temperatures are two of the factors that make Bulgarian roses stand out from others. Then there's the soil.
Тук самата почва е бедна почва, камениста почва. Затова прави по-специфична и миризмата и аромата на розата по-хубава. Затова се казва, това е течното злато на България.
Plus, the Damascenian rose has all these spicy and fruity notes. So they are very well preserved around here. And this is one reason why we like this Bulgarian rose.
There is no sign of Bulgarian rose oil's global demand slowing down. The rose oil market is estimated to expand at a compound annual growth rate of 6.8% between 2019 and 2025. Organic rose oil, like that produced by Agroproduct, is the fastest growing segment.
Второ, света върви, тенденцията е за производство на биологични продукти. Безвредно, няма химия, няма торове вътре и така нататък. И след това направих голяма дистилерия, която в момента работи изцяло 100% само биологични масла и води.
But the scent is what will keep perfumers like Christophe coming back for more.
I don't know, I said already, it's one of those notes, you put it in almost anything, it makes it nicer. We had a joke with some other perfumers. We know we have 1 or 2 rose qualities. We know, oh, just put that, just put a little bit, just a little bit, and clack, it gives either sparkle or body to a fragrance. So it's really nice.
Carving this bracing is the most crucial step in building a CF Martin & Company acoustic guitar. But you won't even see it on the finished product. This X-shaped pattern of wood under the hood is what gives Martin guitars their signature sound. It'll cost you at least $2,800 for Martin's most iconic American-made model, the D28. But that's nothing compared to the priciest guitar Martin sells, a limited edition dreadnought that goes for $125,000. And on the secondary market, the instruments sell for even more. Some of the oldest in Martin's collection are estimated to be worth nearly $500,000.
This is our pre-war D45. This guitar sold for around $240 when it was new, and now it's worth 6 figures, well into 6 figures.
And while its reputation among celebrities contributes to the brand's popularity, musicians say there's a one-of-a-kind sound a Martin acoustic guitar makes. So what exactly makes these guitars sound different? And is that why they're so expensive?
My goal is to make $1 million Martin. Haven't done it yet.
Chris Martin IV is the 6th generation of his family to run the company. His namesake, Christian Frederick Martin, founded the company in 1833.
I work at a company that makes the best of its kind. I work at a company that makes the real thing. We're not making a commodity. We're not making a copy of a Martin guitar. We're still making the original Martin guitar.
Martin employs about 1,100 people across its 2 factories in Nazareth, Pennsylvania and Navajo, Mexico. The craftspeople in Nazareth work on the high-end models and custom designs. It all starts with selecting the right wood. Guitars and other instruments use what are called tone woods. These have special properties that vibrate and transmit the ideal sound for musical instruments. Typically, spruce is used for the tops and bottoms, rosewood for the sides, and maple or mahogany for the neck. But Martin uses a wide variety of woods for its instruments. These tone woods are responsible for the clear, bell-like tone that musicians like Craig Thatcher say is a key difference in Martin's acoustic guitars.
Every guitar has their own voice, particularly acoustic guitars. And there is a Martin tone, a Martin voice that you can distinguish when they're hearing it on the radio, hearing on records, hearing it being played on movie soundtracks. The Martin guitar really stands out, that tone. It's a full and rich, vibrant sound with deep and full basses, a really great mid-range, nice high end that cuts through.
The tops and bottoms are not one piece, but actually a panel that has been carefully sliced in half and opened like a book, then glued together at the edges. This book matching helps create a perfectly symmetrical pattern. These pieces are then checked for quality in a process known as candling.
Candling is a light that shines through the wood, and back in the old days they used to use a regular candle and do it like that, but now they upgraded it, thank God.
Dee has been with Martin for 21 years, and she has spent the last 9 working in the candling department looking for any imperfections before they progress any further down the assembly line.
What we do is we grade the wood, it goes from 2 to 8, and then what we do is we candle to look for any sap pockets or pitch pockets or knots or anything like that.
Like Dee, many of the workers in Martin's factory have been with the company for a long time. Rodney Tashner, who currently runs the laser cutter, has been working the line for 33 years.
We are running a 400-watt laser machine here, cut out all the tops, sides, backs, most of all, pretty much all flat stock that's run on here.
The next step is the most crucial to Martin's signature sound, the bracing. Bracing refers to a hidden pattern of wood glued under the top of the guitar for structural support. All acoustic guitars require bracing, but designing effective bracing is complicated. Because the guitar's top is the most important factor of its sound, it's crucial to not burden it with too much wood.
One of the things when you're looking at an acoustic guitar, you want it to be structurally sound, but you also want it to sound good. Because if we brace this too heavy, the top's not going to vibrate freely, and if we don't brace the top strong enough, it could just implode on itself.
In the 1840s, Christian Frederick Martin invented this X pattern, which provides plenty of structural integrity without sacrificing tone. The design was so successful that almost all steel string acoustic guitars made today use the pattern.
And what's that old saying? If imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, we are very flattered because we are very imitated.
A craftsperson will glue the pieces onto the surface with fish glue and use this machine to hold everything in place while it dries. These thin pieces of wood are positioned and then carved into the right shape based on each guitar model.
After I take the guitar, I'll shape down all the braces to a certain size and sand them down and round them out. Every model has its own particular needs. They're all very different, and we do have to memorize quite a bit of them. There's about like 50 different patterns that I have to memorize. I started back in September, and it took me about 5 months before I could really start doing these myself. There is a lot of training that goes into it.
The sides of the guitar are separate pieces of rosewood, which are steam pressed into this curved shape and glued together to form the rim. A perforated ribbon of Spanish cedar is attached around the edges for additional support using clothespins. The ribbon adds surface area that will assist with attaching the top and bottom.
As much as we do on the outside, we try to clean up all the glue inside and make sure all of the ribbons where it should be, and braces are fit nice and snug in their pockets.
Aluminium casting is used to attach the top and bottom to the rim and hold everything together while it dries. Next, either this machine or a craftsperson cuts a channel around the edge of the guitar, a process called freezing, to make space for the binding strip. The body is sanded and sprayed with fillers, sealers, toners, and stains to protect the wood. And it's left to hang dry in a curing room at a high temperature until the finishing has hardened. Though many steps of the process are still done by hand, Martin has started to incorporate robotics into its assembly line, some of which were built and designed in-house in its machining department. This giant robotic arm, for example, suctions onto the wood and is programmed to buff each body at very specific pressures. The necks of the guitars go through their own parallel production process. First, they're cut separately into identical base pieces. Then, they're sanded down into shape by hand. Each model requires a different neck shape, so craftspeople use these metal gauges to keep all the shapes consistent. Then the fingerboard, frets and nut are added at stations down the line. But before a guitar can be glued together, a technician will perform a pre-fit to ensure everything aligns perfectly. Steve Miller has worked for Martin for 26 years, and for him, it's a family tradition.
Yeah, we have a lot of family. I could sit here and go, my uncle, my aunts, my sister works here. I had a grandfather that worked here. Yeah, we go back, way back, since 1833, so.
Once assembled, the guitar goes into this machine called a pleg, which simulates the tension of the strings and makes computerized adjustments to the frets to ensure the guitar is perfectly intonated and playable. But the final and most crucial step is to string up the guitar and play it. Only a human being, like Matt Hotchkiss, is suitable for this task.
This is my first job in the factory, yes. I was lucky. I've been a musician for about 8-9 years now. I went to school for music, came out, and then I started working here, and just inspecting guitars has been a dream, so it's been great. My grandfather had an old 76 D35 that I've been playing since I was very young, and it was important to me to work here when I graduated college, just so it lived on through my family and through me.
Matthew will make sure everything looks perfect before stringing the guitar, tuning it, and gluing on the pick guard.
It does take a steady hand to make sure you get it right, but we do use a little bit of a marking to make sure. We also look for any type of defects within the guitar, like any dents or anything that has happened throughout the process.
And last but not least, he will test it out. And place it in the case for the customer. Martin's guitars have evolved significantly over the 200 years of the company's existence. Just take a look and listen to this model from 1834, the oldest guitar in its collection.
You can see it's very different from what we build now. There's a heavy violin influence. It has maple back and sides, that figure-8 body shape.
The company invented the iconic extra-large dreadnought-style guitar, named after a World War I battleship. Martin saw a surge in demand for its guitars during the COVID-19 pandemic, with many people stuck at home looking for something to do. It's seen about 20 to 30% growth per year over the last 2 years.
So COVID created a guitar boom. It wasn't a boom that was good for everyone in the music industry. It was good for you if you made something that you could play at home or home recording. It was not good if you made giant stadium PA systems.
But the popularity of acoustic guitars also means more trees being cut down. So Martin says it's made a big push towards sustainability.
They're called rare exotic timbers for a reason, because they're becoming more rare and more exotic. So we not only have to be more judicious in how we use these traditional woods, we absolutely, positively have to look for alternatives.
While Martin guitars may be expensive, price isn't the only consideration for dedicated guitarists.
When you put the money into a guitar, you expect it to really respond. It's almost like it's a part of you. It's an extension of the artist. And why would you not want to have the best that you possibly can afford?
And though high-end guitars tend to age like wines, increasing in value and quality over time, Chris says players shouldn't buy Martins as just a monetary investment.
Having a Martin guitar that you can play is more fun than looking at your 401k account. And if at the end of the day your old Martin guitar was worth more than your 401k account, bonus.
A single strand of cotton is barely visible, but when woven into a sheet, Egyptian cotton can cost over $900. It's synonymous with luxury, but what you're buying might not be Egyptian cotton at all. The Cotton Egypt Association estimated that 90% of products labelled Egyptian cotton in 2016 were inauthentic. And 8 years later, the problem hasn't gone away. So what is real Egyptian cotton? And why is it so expensive? The process of producing real Egyptian cotton often starts here in the Nile River Delta. Though cotton is grown throughout Egypt, the highest quality cotton comes from these fertile plains. These puffs, called bolls, are technically a fruit because they have seeds. But the real value lies in the hundreds of thousands of fibers each boll contains.
القطن ده يعتبر المحصول الرئيسي لدى الفلاح المصري. بزرع قطن عمري كله من 5 سنوات. من سن 5 سنين أنا عمري 73 سنة بزرع قطن.
Al-Sadir grows 2 of the highest quality varieties of Egyptian cotton, Giza 92 and 45.
القطن جيزة 92 ده صنف عالي المتانة والنعومة والجودة ومن أعلى الأصناف في الجمهورية.
In Egypt, workers pick the highest quality cotton by hand. It's slower than harvesting by machine, but the Cotton Egypt Association says hand picking keeps the fibers intact. Pickers harvest 15 to 20 kilos per day. But what makes this cotton unique can barely be seen with the naked eye. It's what's known as extra-long staple cotton. Most of the world's cotton comes from the plant Gossypium hirsutum, also known as upland cotton. It's so cheap and abundant that it even makes up 75% of paper money in the US. But extra-long staple cotton, or ELS, is a unique species called Gossypium barbadense, which accounts for only an estimated 2.5 to 4% of global production. Compared to upland, the fibers, called staples, are longer and stronger. When spun together, ELS produces softer, more durable thread and finer fabrics. But unprocessed Egyptian ELS can cost 2 to 3 times more than upland cotton. Despite that, you can find Egyptian cotton on countless labels. But experts say the numbers don't add up. Egypt produces less than 1% of the world's cotton, so there isn't enough Egyptian cotton grown to actually make all the products that claim to use it. In 2016, Target and Walmart pulled Egyptian cotton sheets after concluding their supplier, Wellspun, had sold them fake ones. Target said Wellspun hadn't used real Egyptian cotton for nearly 2 years. Today, many sellers online say a product uses Egyptian cotton when it might not contain any at all. Like this $25 sheet set from Amazon, which is labelled Luxury Egyptian Sheets but uses microfiber fabric. Or this sheet from Walmart. The title claims it's 100% Egyptian cotton, but the description says it's 100% polyester. After Business Insider reached out to Walmart, the company removed that product page and shared this statement. Walmart's online marketplace does allow customers to report products, but that puts the responsibility onto the consumer to educate themselves on how to spot fakes. Manufacturers that work with the real thing carefully trace their cotton throughout the complex supply chain. And picking all of this cotton is just the start of turning a seed into a finished product. Workers gin the cotton to separate the seeds from the fibres and remove any debris. Then, they pack it together in bales that weigh almost 500 pounds. One bale can produce over 200 pairs of jeans. But when workers pull cotton free from a bale, it's a mess. At this factory, a series of machines clean, card and align each fluffy fibre. The cotton is then coiled into a thick strand called a sliver. A series of rovers stretch the sliver thinner and thinner before winding it together.
اللي هو زي ده المبروم اللي احنا بنتعامل معاه بعد كده على مكنة الغزل.
The final yarn looks wispy, but is stronger than cotton from the bale.
دي آخر مرحلة في مراحل اللي هي الغزل. يجي الماسورة اللي هي بتاعت الغزل زي ما حضرتك شايفها اللي هي زي دي كده. بندورها بحيث تطلع في الاخر كونه على حسب نمره العميل اللي عايزها وكده. واخر مرحله ديت.
While the harvesting is done by hand, most of the spinning and weaving is done mechanically. Giant looms rapidly weave thousands of strands into a wide variety of fabrics. Workers carefully observe each step and reach in to repair any breaks.
The extra long staple, we use it for bedding, and also we use it for some items for the babies.
Merchandisers like Vivian Nabil work with clients to turn fabric into finished products. Vivian uses different varieties of Egyptian cotton depending on the product.
The difference in the fiber length and the color of the cotton itself. 95, it's more creamy than Giza 92, which is more whiter.
Giza 92 and 86 have a longer staple length than Giza 95. They're also generally more expensive. Vivian sends many of the bedding products produced here to companies in Europe. She says her most expensive sheets cost between $600 and $800. Even from less expensive retailers, Egyptian cotton sheets regularly cost over $200. But the reputation and high prices have attracted countless imitations. The Cotton Egypt Association runs an accreditation process that allows approved companies to use its logo. But the system isn't perfect. Wellspun, the company pulled from the shelves in 2016, also used the logo. Today, parts of the cotton industry use DNA testing to improve traceability. But experts say testing isn't widespread enough. Paper trails are still used to track cotton throughout the increasingly complex supply chain. Knockoffs have the potential to harm Egypt's cotton industry, as does competition from ELS cotton grown elsewhere, such as Pima cotton from the United States. But Khalid Al-Maghodi, the general manager for Naturetex, says his concerns lie elsewhere.
The big challenge is two things. First, climate change may badly affect our ability to farm the cotton. Second, the availability of the water. Cotton needs more water, so if it's not available anymore, it will make a limitation for our capability to farm more cotton and produce more cotton.
That concern is shared by farmers like Al-Sadir.
في ظل تغيير المناخ والاحتباس الحراري وإذابة الجليد، بدأنا الفلاح عنده صحوة بيعرف إمتى يزرع وإمتى ما يزرعش. فبدأنا نزرع اتأخرنا شهر وشوية. المدة اللي بيستهلكها القطن كان بيستهلك زمان 8 شهور. الوقت بيستهلك أقصى حاجة 6 شهور.
This could make Egyptian cotton and cotton grown around the world more expensive in the future. So, if you want to buy Egyptian cotton, what steps can you take? First, look at the price. If a set of sheets claims to be 100% Egyptian cotton, but only costs $25, it's likely not the real deal. Additionally, look for the Cotton Egypt Association logo and trademark, and read product descriptions carefully to find out if a product really contains ELS or just Egyptian quality cotton. These workers are looking for any defects in the fabric of this hot air balloon, because once it's in the air, a tear could be catastrophic. That's why they put the fabric through this stress test. But it's not just the balloon that needs thorough quality control. A leak in the burner or a fault in the basket assembly can be just as dangerous. Like a puzzle, these pieces must be aligned perfectly. Once complete, this hot air balloon will sell for as much as €150,000. So how does over 1,000 kilograms of fabric and wood float through the sky? And why are these balloons so expensive? Ever since the first manned hot air balloon flight in 1783, people have been captivated by the experience it offers. Today's manufacturers, like Ultra Magic Balloons in Catalonia, Spain, preserve this simplicity while modernising it. It all starts with the envelope. Hot air balloons are aircraft, so manufacturers must carefully follow regulations set by governmental aviation agencies, down to the fabric the balloon is made of. Ultra Magic uses specialised balloon-grade polyester and nylon fabrics coated in silicone for their heat-resistant, antifungal and durable properties. Workers like Monica Murato inspect the fabric and subject it to stress tests, ensuring that it's tear-resistant and durable.
En principio se revisa toda la tela y cuando se empieza se mira con esta banda de la luz si hay algún desperfecto en el tejido y si todo está bien se empieza a cortar y a lo largo si sale alguna tara, algo que vemos en el tejido, se corta y se separa y se continúa con el proceso, pero siempre mirando que esté todo en perfectas condiciones.
Workers cut elongated strips of fabric called gauze, which will be sewn into the final round balloon envelope. Standard gauze are cut by hand, whereas the most complex shapes and design elements are done with a laser cutting machine. Just cutting the envelope pieces can take a week.
El patrón partido es más difícil porque es, imaginaros que estáis haciendo un puzzle, pero aquí se cose con un embudo. Por eso es más difícil.
Consuelo has been working as a seamstress at Ultramagic for 37 years. She's one of 20. She sews the gauze together over pieces of load tape. These are durable, seatbelt-like strips that help carry the weight of the hot air balloon and prevent strain on the fabric. Consuelo's experience sewing the balloons makes her invaluable. Adriana Yador, an engineer at Ultramagic and one of the daughters of the founder, says sewing is the skill that has the biggest effect on quality.
The most difficult part in the process is sewing the envelope, and it's basically because the fabric is very difficult to work with, and it takes 2 years for a seamstress to build a complete hot air balloon by herself.
The envelope alone accounts for 50% of the cost, and the larger the balloon, the more fabric required, so the more expensive it is. Envelopes for the smallest 3-person balloons can take 2 weeks to make, with the final balloon cost at €30,000. But Ultramagic's largest balloon envelopes require up to 2 months of work. They can hold 29 people and cost €150,000. Custom design requests will bump the price up higher. While Consuelo constructs the envelope, engineers work on another essential component, the burner system. Smaller balloons require 2 burners, while larger ones need 4. Ultramagic subcontracts its burner designs, but assembles the parts in-house. Most hot air balloons use liquid propane, which travels through superheated coils that vaporize it. A pilot light ignites the gas and the flame heats the air inside the balloon. This hot air is lighter than the colder air outside the balloon, lifting it. Engineers carefully wrap the coils in a spiral and connect it to the fuel tank.
Luego cada pieza va como un puzzle, ¿no? Vas montando, pero ya con los planos que tenemos vamos montando. Esto sería la parte del serpentín, que es una vez montado todo el mecanismo, es lo último que ponemos, y después procedemos a poner las mangueras, que serían de este tipo, para hacer la prueba del gas.
They test for gas leaks by spraying soapy water, lighting the burner, and inspecting for any bubbles. They also check for any debris that may hinder the burner's functionality. Just as with the envelope, any defects here could risk the burner failing and the balloon falling from the sky. Meanwhile, Samuel Agustin and his team hand-weave the baskets that passengers will ride in. Samuel has been weaving for Ultramagic for 16 years. He says building a basket requires careful teamwork.
Normalmente trabajamos en parejas, una persona dentro y otra persona la parte del exterior. Y si es una cesta como esta, que es una C14, pues ya desde el principio hasta final son 1 mes, 3 semanas aproximadamente. Pero si hacemos entre 4 personas, a lo mejor 1 mes terminamos.
Ultramagic constructs its baskets out of rattan. It's not an aesthetic choice, but a practical one. Rattan is not only flexible and durable, it absorbs any shock from a bumpy landing, protecting the passengers inside.
Los cables sí que son mucho más importantes. Cualquier fallo no se puede volar.
These cables are woven into the wicker basket and are eventually connected to the envelope, helping to support the weight of the basket. According to Ultramagic, the rattan materials, as well as the time it takes to construct the baskets properly, account for 30% of a balloon's cost. When the sewing, engineering and weaving departments have finally completed their work, the puzzle pieces of the hot air balloon are ready to be put together. The basket is connected to a metal frame that also supports the burner system. Steel cables are connected to the envelope through carabiners, joining all the elements of the hot air balloon. Then it's time to inspect the balloon. A team inflates the 7.3-metre envelope to check for leaks. They inspect every inch of rope, cable and fabric for any defects that may have been missed in production. If everything's up to par, the basket is flipped upright, the burners are lit, and the balloon is ready to fly. Ultramagic is seeing demand rise, especially in countries with increasing tourism. The company sells its hot air balloons to individual buyers, as well as companies looking to offer commercial balloon rides. It's a team of almost 70, making about 100 hot air balloons a year. But the company says meeting the growing demand is challenging. It takes time to train its employees in such niche skill sets, so expanding too quickly can come at the expense of quality. Even as the global hot air balloon market is expected to, balloon to $11.5 billion by 2027.